Harry, how are you,
How you going, mate?
mate? What a cluster, mate.
Bloody hell. We're both as bad as each other, I think.
Mate, have you heard this saying? Daylight saving has stuffed me around so often. I've missed
Yeah.
flights because of it and everything. But
Yeah.
I got this funny meme that floats around. I think they said only a government would think if you cut one end of the blanket off and sew it on the other end, it'd actually
Yeah.
be a longer blanket.
Yeah. No, bloody hell. The other day I was like prepped an hour earlier. I was like going, yeah, all sorted. And then I went, oh, he's in Queensland. Shit. And then today I'm like going, okay, get it sorted for I was like, I've got an hour, I got plenty of time to get sorted. And then I was like, oh shit.
All good. Now we're even. Oh,
We're here. Yeah.
it's taking the pressure off me.
Yeah.
Mate, thanks for doing this. It's awesome. You're back in Australia at the moment.
Yep.
You head off. So what's been happening in the off season?
Oh, not much, mate. I've only just started training everything again because I just had surgery and everything because I dislocated my shoulder twice last year and once the year before, and it just kept popping out every time I had like a decent crash. So I had to get surgery to get it all healed up. So a reconstruction. So that's what that one is just there.
Yeah.
So it's basically a 10-week recovery, I think they've told me. So I haven't been riding. So it's just after 6 weeks I picked up training again. So
Yeah.
it's just
Right.
been a slow process basically, but it's going all right. So um
When
I
you say
think
training, you mean physical training, not.
like gym training and everything. Like I can go. I think for the first few weeks I was cycling inside, but I couldn't really do any gym training on this shoulder. Like I do everything with the rest of my body and stuff. But as far as that, I literally just couldn't do anything with it. Just like stretch it out and all that sort of stuff. But other than or anything, pretty much until now.
Yeah, tricky thing, shoulders. I remember years ago, I was doing a job back in my past life, and
Yeah,
they dropped the D shackle from
yeah.
from a helicopter. They were dropping it,
Oh yeah,
and it hit me on the point of the shoulder,
yeah,
dislocated the AC joint or something.
yeah. Right. No, no good.
20 years later, I had a surgery. It took forever, and the first
Yeah,
this was painful. Um,
yeah.
I was going to ask you about that because, you posted that picture, I think in December or something.
Yeah,
So it's only December you had the
yeah. The
operation.
11th. Yeah, yeah. I
Right.
think this is week 8 now.
Okay. And prognosis?
By
uh,
like so far, it's pretty good. Like I reckon it's probably about 80 to 90% from where it was like initially. Like it's the strength and that's there. It's just not quite stable and everything, like fully stable at the moment. Like so, if you're like doing stuff over your head, it sort of it gets a bit how you going. But other than that, I'm pretty happy with it so far.
yeah. Well, you just moved it then. I mean, that's looking
Yeah.
pretty good. That's
Yeah, so I got most of the mobility back. It's probably like a couple of degrees off of where it was before, but I've just had that many injuries on this arm. Like I did my humerus 2 years ago, done my hands. All of it's been on this arm, so it's racing for you.
You had to pick motorbikes, didn't you?
Yeah,
You should have followed the path of Tom, gone car.
yeah. Cars. I think the
Uh,
only bones he's broken's on bikes too.
oh, really?
Yeah,
I think it's part and parcel, isn't it? You're going to race anyway. You've
yeah,
had it's a pretty cool career. I remember, a customer of mine back. I think I first met you in 2016 or something, and I always remember that
yeah,
kid. And I sent you that video of
yeah,
you and Tom and your dad sitting on the wall at Supersport, Sydney
yeah.
Motor Park. What do you think of that?
Tired. I looked at that and went, "Geez, I'm so young." Just
Yeah,
I showed Dad the other day. And he's like, "You were like a baby going in there." And like, it just feels so wrong when you look at it, how young you were. But no, it's cool. It's funny to look back at all that stuff and it makes me feel old now. And I'm not even 21 yet. I'm
yeah,
like going, "Geez, it's already been nearly 9 years since I've been racing on road bikes." So
yeah, yeah. You're,
yeah,
yeah. You've had it is. It's you're in your ninth season,
yeah,
pretty much, and
yeah. I think I started. That was the first year I did like a club race. I think with St George
yeah.
that year. So I did Superbike school first, and then I think I did a couple of club races that year, and then the next year was my first proper year of racing. But no, it's just gone by real quick. I think this year's my fourth or fifth season in Europe now. So even that's gone quick for me.
It's very cool. I want to go back because you're and I got your stats up here in front of me.
Yeah.
You debuted in your racing in 2017, so you went in
Yeah. Junior GP first
right,
year.
right on a 300.
No, it was on R15, so
Oh, right, the little bike.
150s. Yeah. Real little bikes.
Right now, go back before that. when did you start? What got you into motorbike riding in the beginning?
I've been riding pretty much like all my life. So I think I actually hopped on a bike at like 2 or 3 years old, like real young. And because Dad's always worked at a quarry and stuff, and we had a quarry out at Agnes Banks there, and and ever since I can remember, we've been riding out there just on peewees, quad bikes, and everything since I was young. And then one day, Dad was actually just so happened to be one of his workers was off. That was a truck driver, and Dad ended up taking the shift, and they were delivering sand to a flat track that was down the road.
Yeah.
And it sort of just evolved from there. He met one guy, and he's like, "Oh, come out and get your young work to come. We got a kickstart day for all these little kids and stuff." And I was on my little, I think 50 or 70 at the time, and I ended up going out there and doing flat track for this the first time. And I think I did that for about from about 7 years old all the way till 12 years old. And then we met a few people that were doing road racing at the time, and that's just sort of how it all developed from there. But I never really did a lot of racing at flat track. I did a bit of stuff like here and there, but not like Australian titles and any of that stuff. Just heaps of training at flat track. But no, it's just sort of out of the blue went from there.
It seems to be, it's kind of like the Australian way, like in Europe, they go and do
They got
predominant.
mini motos like straight from like 5 years old.
Well, that's yeah, which is on bitumen. So
Yeah,
road racing from the beginning, the Australian way seems to be get into, get on a bike and go and ride in the quarries and the dirt and whatever.
yeah,
It was the same for me, it was just, riding up the dirt roads and everything. But
yeah.
and then the transition into bitumen. Um, what
I
was
think
kind of your first experience on that shift from dirt to bitumen? Was it easy, hard, or?
um I don't think it was hard. It's a lot different. I think the first time I actually rode on bitumen, I rode on a 50cc scooter. And that was the first thing I ever rode on, or on my 110 as well, I think. But I think the riding style itself was just the first thing that was difficult to transition to at the time. But it was never, I don't want to say it was like real difficult. It was just that muscle memory of not like going back to that old style of flat track at the start. Because I immediately wanted to go, like when I went to do road racing, I wanted to go straight into that style of riding, not like motard style or anything. I wanted to try the actual road racing style. So,
Hmm.
but it's funny when you first hop on it, your first thing goes into your head when you're a little kid, or even just now for anyone is, oh, I got to drag my knee, I got to drag my knee, and you look at old photos of yourself, you're hanging like so far off the bike, your ass is fully off the bike, and the bike's completely upright or something. That's the funniest thing to look at.
You want to know something? That's an adult thing as well. We
Yeah,
hear it all the time at the school, eh?
yeah.
You know,
It's the funniest thing to look at.
that's hilarious. Obviously your goals have changed since then.
Yeah,
Um,
no.
is it get your helmet on the bitumen now?
No, I don't even like wearing new helmets half the time. I'm scared of scratching them.
Yeah,
That's one of my things. I hate wearing new leathers, new helmets, scratching everything.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um, when did you? Oh, actually, go back one. Did Matt? Shout out to Matt too, and
Yeah.
Louise. I got to give them both a big shout out because they've been, huge supporters of your career.
Yeah.
Um, did your dad race or ride or anything, or was it just something that you
I,
took your bike or
I
something?
think dad grew up. I think he had a XR80 or something. Him and his brother used to share all the time, but he was a tennis player.
Yeah, right.
So literally, me and my brother were the first ones in our whole family to go racing of any sort. Like we never had any background for that, and I think that's another thing that was probably like a harder transition to into racing was that you don't have the connections either. And I think that's another thing that a lot of Australians struggle with overseas as well, is that we don't have those connections.
Yeah.
But other than that, yeah, didn't really have any background, so we just
Yeah, wow.
it was sort of just winging it from the start and seeing where it went. But yeah,
How much support and involvement, did you get from your parents during that period, as you started to get into it seriously?
I think this time, like I've always had full support from my family, like from the start. So it was never like from mum and dad. Like outside of that, he's a little bit, oh, it's dangerous. Like you get your grandparents and everything, they're all worried, and the same with my parents and everything too. But no, the support from family itself has been more than you can imagine. So it's really great to have that and having like even when I went to Europe the first few years, I had just me and mum. Where we went through COVID and everything, it was just her and I for 9, 10 months of the year overseas, and just being ourselves and being away from my brother and my dad. So I think that was more hard for her as well than for me.
Mm,
Like it was difficult for me as well, but I guess I had something more to occupy myself with, I guess.
mm.
But no, just the actual support from everyone has been really great, yeah, for my family.
Okay.
And I do appreciate that heaps.
Yeah, I bet you do. It shows too. I know what your family's pretty tight. Um, Now, as you're leading up to kind of 2017, in there at some point you started getting coaching and that. When did the coaching begin? What happened there?
That was probably that time. I think that video you sent me there. I think in the video I said it was my third time at Superbike school at the time in 2016. That was the year that it pretty much all started for coaching. Like I had coaching a little bit in flat track, but for road racing, Superbike school was the first place I went to for coaching.
Right.
Yeah,
And
and then
you were there,
sorry,
like you just continued through and just kept doing level fours.
I think I went up to about 30 times or 40 times I went there. Like I did a lot of track days because also the other thing that's difficult with road racing in Australia and like comparing to Spain and that is they can get on track there
Mm.
from a very young age and it's normal. Whereas here it's sort of like to get onto the major tracks, like for training, you got to be like 12, 13 years old. So that was sort of the best access we could get to coaching and being on a track as well with Superbike school at the time.
Yeah.
So that's sort of how we went through it all, and it actually turned out good.
Yeah. They had it feels like there was a lot more juniors involved in it back then because, Santa was there as well. Um,
Yeah, it's funny to see that like a lot of the kids that are overseas now that we all were at the super white school at the exact same time with each other pretty much. So we had Jacob, Harrison, Senna, me, and there was a couple of others that were there. It's no, it's cool to see that.
yeah. Well, I think because I remember it was really a lot of junior races there. 'Cause shout out to Stephanie Redmond. She spent a lot of her time, doing the coaching of the junior races.
Yeah.
How much influence did she have on your riding?
Until I pretty much went to Europe, I was coaching with her I think for about what was it, 3 years, I think. So yeah, so getting me to that point to go overseas, yeah, I think she was a big help for that as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, 2017, your debut. Then what did you do? You competed in the Australian Supersport 300 Championship, and seriously in 18 and 19, and then you won the championship in 2020.
Yeah.
Yeah, what was that like? That experience?
So the first few years in Australia, no, it was really good. I think even from like the first year in 300s, we were sort of mixing up in the top five. I think got a few podiums like those 2 years.
Yeah.
But I think in 2019, I was all up the front in the championship, and then I got the opportunity to do a couple of wild cards over in the German championship at the time. So I ended up taking those, and that sort of I think put us down a little bit in the championship. So,
Right.
but then the following year in 2020, when I think COVID hit, and I did the race Phillip Island in ASBK, and then went and raced in Germany, and everything in that year was sort of clustered a bit into like a smaller combined championship. So I was able to compete in both and managed to come away with the win in that one. But no, I enjoyed the few years that I had in Australia, but when the opportunity came overseas and I wanted to jump at it straight away, yeah.
Yeah. So you went overseas 2021?
Yeah, I did. I did my first year in Germany was 2020,
Right.
full year.
Right, right. And then you went 2021, you went to the World Supersport
Yeah,
300. Right.
yeah.
Now you made a transition, and correct me if I'm wrong, you went from Yamahas to Kawasaki's in World Super.
In I would say so when I was racing my last, so 2019, I was in Yamaha in Australia.
Yeah.
And when I went to Europe, I went straight to Kawasaki's there and I was on Kawasaki's all the way from end of 19 all the way to the end of 22.
Right. What was the most difficult thing or the biggest challenge for you competing in that World Supersport 300 Championship? I mean, there was some serious competition in that.
Definitely. The thing with the World Championship is that, and and the thing with Europe, and I see it a lot with a lot of the riders that are coming over now, is and now that they're making the schedules more tight,
Mm,
you've got to do all the preparation beforehand, because if you're showing up on race weekend learning a track, you're already on the back foot, and
mm.
you're putting yourself at a disadvantage straight away. So that was the hardest thing, and being able to get access to all the tracks to get there beforehand, just so you're taking away that disadvantage from the start. So that's another
Mm.
one of the harder things when you're not from those areas to get that experience.
I think you may. I think I read a comment at one point. You talked about that. You go to a new track, and they're big tracks. They're ones we know. Through what we see on the motor
Yeah,
and things like that. Um, and you made a comment about that, learning it. What was the difference between your situation and the Europeans? Do they get more preparation on those tracks, or is it just
I
different?
think it's just the fact that they've been racing on them for multiple years and stuff, and the style of the tracks in Europe are completely different to Australia. Like we got over in Europe, they're big wide tracks, and like especially on like a 300 or something, there it was just flat out everywhere, and that was a big difference. Whereas in Australia, we got real like not narrow, but like a lot narrower tracks,
Mm,
and it's just a completely different riding style. Like, because I think the closest thing you can probably get to Europe for Australia would probably be the Bend for me.
yeah,
So that's probably a sort of similar style, but just different bikes, different tracks, and everything, and it just all makes that little bit difference.
yeah. If you think about Australian riders, and I was talking to Neil Chappell. I don't know if you remember Chappie, the other
Yeah,
day.
vaguely.
Yeah, he's based in New Zealand. We were talking about this whole difference in culture, the Australia and New Zealand. It's not a sport that is widely recognized, really. We're competing with rugby union and Aussie rules, and
Mm,
if you ask people names of famous people in sport, they'll
yeah,
tell you cricketer or something.
yeah,
But then you've got riders in Europe from Spain and countries where motorcycling is almost a national sport, and if you ask them, a famous sports person, they'll bring up a motorcycle rider.
yeah.
What was the biggest difference you noticed between, what you've been exposed to and how you approached it, and those European, kids that you actually raced with?
Yeah, like you said, I think it's like where you come here, it's all ball sports and cricket and all that sort of stuff. And it's motorcycles and probably car racing, not as much, but motorbikes is probably like at the bottom of the chart of like popularity, just because I think based on population and stuff, well, and the accessibility of it as well, I think it's the hard bit. But in Europe, it's pretty much like football and motorbikes. It's just completely different, and just being able to you can start from a real young age, whereas here's I think it's a bit higher. So just the affordability of it overseas too. Like you can go to a track, pretty much any kart track, every day of the week and spend I think €40 and train all day.
Really?
Whereas here, yeah, it's cheap as chips. And you go and here to do a track day, you're probably spending 250 plus probably.
Hmm.
And that's just the big difference there as well. And I think just because they've got the population as well, and you can go to any I think there's a track down about 2 hours from me because I'm in Andorra, and where my team from last year was based, they were based at a track, and they had flat track, a kart track, and a full size track, and they were pretty much open every day. And I think for kart training it was like €60, flat track was about 50, and the big track was €120, and
Really?
you could do them every day of the week, pretty much open pit lane.
Really?
Yeah,
You
I
can't.
think they'd close one day a week. That was it.
It's ridiculous here. Like, that's completely different. I can understand the difference in the riding because I know up here, you wait every 2 months, for an open day or something to go and do a track day. That's worlds apart.
Yeah.
What was the difference in the riders themselves? So the culture's different. Do you notice any difference in competing with those? Are they different as riders?
I'd like the actual racing, I think they're a lot more aggressive, and I don't know. It's there's not a massive comparison to it. Like I think they're just been at it for a lot longer as well. They've got that little bit more experience and a bit more of an edge on us, I think, and that just gives them the more confidence over us, I think.
Yeah.
but the actual like you look at all the Australian riders that go over, and we're not in the middle of nowhere or anything. We're all
Mm.
it's like you look at Jacob and Kelso and Senna and all that. They're all at the front. So I don't think like from a level perspective that Australia is far behind. I think it's probably like on the smaller bikes. I think it's probably one of the higher championships, but we got a lot of different rules in Australia as well, like compared to like bike wise and everything. Like a lot of our in Europe, we've got this thing in 600s called next generation, and we got stock and everything, and it's all the same as world championships. So you're getting that experience on those bikes, and you can sort of progress a lot better, and you're not changing too much. So you got those bikes to sort of can keep going through all the championships, and it doesn't change too much.
Yeah, right. You made the transition to mm, the bigger super sport class, 23, 24. So you spent a couple
Yeah.
of class. What was that transition like for you? Easy or hard?
Coming from 300s, I think it was probably the hardest thing because and I'd ridden 300s at that point, I think for about 4 or 5 years. So, and the hardest thing from 300s to 600, you pretty much got to unlearn everything
Mm.
to start again from the 600 because it's a completely different riding style for me. And that was like the first year for me that was the goal was just to try and completely change my riding style because we're on 300 it's you got more grip and you got more grip than power, whereas on the 600 you got more power than grip. So just changing all that riding style, just on 300 you're smashing the throttle everywhere and putting it to 100%, where on 600 you got to pick it up or like hang off the bike a little bit more and pick up the bike a bit early and sort of square the corners off. And that was the hardest thing to change instead of being like a big arc and holding it flat out on a 300 all the time. That was
Yeah.
the hard thing to transition to.
You never, from memory, you never rode the bigger bikes at any of the time at the superbike school. Did you?
Nothing. Sorry.
It was always 300s or little bikes. Did you get any coaching or guidance when you made that transition to the bigger bike?
So I think I did like, yeah, I never did any like multiple days in Australia. I think I rode a 600 a couple times in Australia, like over the span of 2 or 3 years. Like I actually hopped on one and like a lot earlier than before I raced, but I only rode it like 2 or 3 times. But no, when I was fortunate enough that in the team I was on that they had a rider coach there, and that was sort of where we went from. So it was good to have that and sort of made the process a little bit easier as well. And the fact that they had other riders at the time from the team that could help me in that situation that had won with them as well, and they had that experience to translate across to me. So that was the thing that I think benefited me as well.
Now you're making a transition again. Now, well, not so much of a transition, I guess. You're just moving to a different team, 2020.
Yeah.
You're riding with the Team Speed Racing,
Yep.
and I believe you're riding a new motorbike.
Yeah, so this year with Team Speed, and we're changing to a Ducati V2. So that's a I'm looking forward to, and also nervous to see the comparison for it because I've been with the R6. The R6 is the only 600 I've ridden so far, and I've only just started to get the handle of that. And but I think that it's going to be a good step for us this year, and I'm looking forward to it.
No, I haven't ridden the V2. I've ridden the V4 and an R6, but the big difference, in from a engineering perspective, is you've got a bike that's an inline four, high
Yeah.
inline four. You're shifting to a V twin. Have you had any guidance about that transition? Because it's going to be different type of power and engine braking and things like that.
At the moment, no, not really. Like I think we got the first test on the 23rd, where it's just to warm up and get used to the bike. But yeah, the difference that, like even just riding behind the guys on the V2 last year, you can hear our bikes. We're revving at 15 grand, 16 grand. You hear them sitting at 7 or 8 grand, and they're just pulling. And us, we're just spinning up all the time, and that's the big difference. I think it's going to be from next year, this year.
It'll be awesome. I'm looking forward to following and watching it. It'll be great.
Thank you.
A little bit about your training inside of it. What do you do, to from a physicality perspective? Let's assume your shoulder's all in good nick. What would be, a day in the life or a week in the life of Harry Curry training?
Me, For me, I do pretty much a bit of everything. Like, I think the best form of fitness for motorbikes is to be on a bike, to be motorbikes all the time. Unfortunately, that also comes with a budget's perspective as well. You can't just go out and ride every day that you can. But the best training for that is motorbikes. But for me, I do a lot of cycling myself. I probably do 4 or 5 days out of the week cycling, and gym training. And when my shoulder's in good condition, I usually do a bit of swimming as well. I'm not a big fan of running. I got a bit soft on the knees, but no, I enjoy cycling a lot. That's probably another hobby outside of motorbikes for me. But no, like I said before, like all these kids in Spain, their time on the bike is the best training you can do.
Yeah, right. But you mix it up too. You do a combination of stuff. You do, and again, correct me if I'm wrong. Flat track, motard.
Yep.
Do
Yeah.
you,
So another big thing too in Spain is that a lot of guys are riding 600s on kart tracks. So I just started like the last 2 years of my team in 600s. We did that a fair bit too. So they had the kart track right next to their workshop, and we'd go out and do that. And that was probably the best thing as physicality wise. Like, I don't know if it sort of benefited anyway in like riding skills. Like, it probably did in this to a certain extent, but the actual physicality of it was probably the big thing for it.
yeah, right. Well, hey, like you say, time on the bike because they we used to have a saying back in my day. Enduro racing and that is bike fitness only come from riding bikes.
Yeah. You can be like, and I found it like, so even probably for me now, like I can be as fit as I can, like outside of racing, but because it's probably been around 13 weeks now that I haven't ridden a motorbike, and I could be fit as anything now and go back on the bike and feel crap, like real unfit, out of breath after 10 laps or something, because it's just a completely different way
Yeah.
of doing things. So just doing that, yeah.
Well, laps on the bike, there's no substitute for it at the end of the day.
No,
What is it about cycling that gets motorcycle races? You know?
I think it's more of just an endurance based thing. Like, I actually enjoy it just to like, especially in Andorra where I am, it's actually a really great just views everywhere, and you can go cycling for hours and then just enjoy it. But I think it's more just the endurance base of it and spinning your legs and doing everything. That's the good part of it. But you also need a little bit of weight training as well to just to be able to manage that in the races on the bigger bikes as well.
Yeah. See, what's his name? Alaish.
Espargaro,
Yeah, he's gone to full time.
Little Trek, yeah. He's the test rider for HRC, and then he's also racing professionally cycling.
No, it's he looks like a cyclist actually.
Yeah, fired. He does, I think, like 20 something thousand Ks a year on his pushy. So,
That's
and now probably more since he's going pro as well. So, no, it's crazy.
you competed any races on a push bike?
Oh, not, I've done like, I'm doing one tomorrow actually, just at Eastern Creek, but just like a crit race. But big events, no, I'm not that good. I go all right, but I'm not pro by any means.
Yeah. The reason I asked that is because there are, you do post a few things about the push bike. So
Yeah.
yeah,
No, like I said, I enjoy it, and I do it most days, so it's just another good thing for me. It's good head clearer as well, just to get out of it.
when I was talking to Mike Jones about this, and he said he had one of his best results after a couple of weeks off. Like he chilled out and went back, and I think it was either Queensland Raceway or Morgan Park. He just cleaned up, right? Uh, and the question for you is, when do you perform your best? After what type of activity? What do you do? Around this mindset or the psychology of riding, because it's still a mental game in many ways.
I don't know, just it's a difficult one.
How do you, okay, let me ask it slightly differently. So you're going into a race, what goes through your mind? How do you deal with nerves and things like that leading up to, very close to the start of a race?
Oh, bloody hell. I'm a nervous wreck too. I'm a lot better now than when I used to be. Like when I first started racing, like flat track and stuff. I only did a few races, but if you ask my parents and my brother and stuff, like you could never talk to me for like an hour and a half, 2 hours before the race because I just work myself up into a mess.
Yep.
Yeah, and no, nowadays I'm a lot more chilled. I'll go into the truck and I do a bit of stretching, just put my headphones on, stretch it out, get ready about half an hour before we're meant to go out, and just I don't know, I'm pretty chilled when it comes to like warming up and stuff before a race, like where you see other guys and they're sort of pumping themselves up, like you see Jack a little bit in some races. I'm not quite like that. I do my little routine,
Yep.
but other than that, I'm pretty chill. But once the visor goes down, then it's everything's out.
Yeah, it changes, eh? Because I remember when I used to race, um, I would vomit in my helmet. It was
Oh yeah,
terrible. Oh, it was shocking. Like I'd line up and the nerves would make me sick. But
yeah,
as soon as, the start indicator went off, it was different. Like everything changed, your focus shift.
yeah. Now, a big an example of that, like if you ask my dad, the first race I did over in Europe in 2019 at Assen, and I was an absolute wreck before the race. And he was like, it was nearly to the point where I was that nervous that I didn't want to ride because I just didn't know. It was a new experience for me, and I had a bad day, had a few crashes and stuff. But I think we went out, we got on the grid, still there, just about ready to wet myself. As soon as they all went off the grid, just visor down, and then at the end of that race, I ended up getting a podium.
Yeah.
Just that it's a funny thing, just the way your mind snaps into a different gear and completely forget about everything.
Well, it's all about attention, isn't it? Your
Yeah,
attention shifts to one thing to the exclusion of everything else, which is, beneficial while you're racing.
yeah. No, but the best part, like the thing that it's the worst and best thing ever, just like the nerves itself. I think that's why we enjoy it the most too, and just that feeling we get like sitting on the grid and that moment where siren goes off for 3 minutes, everyone goes off the grid, and it's just that silence, and you're sitting there shaking. Like I'm shaking before the race, nervous. No one's speaking or anything. Just that feeling you get inside is really. I think that's the bit that we all like.
And I'll bet you're not alone.
No.
Um, there was a bit of a hiccup in the racing when you were in World Supersport 300 because there was
Yep.
a fatality, which you were closely connected to. Um, how did you deal with that? How does that affect you now? What do you think about
Yeah. Um. Um. Yeah, that was probably it still is probably the most difficult part of my life and my racing career, being involved. And like I actually ran over Dean Vinales on that day, and all the things you see as well, that was the hard thing to get over. And it probably took the best part of like 2, 3 months after that to get over it. Like, and to not to get over it, but just to be able to do all that stuff. But like seeing psychologists and all that stuff, and just having those people and having just people to talk to was the probably the best thing you could do. But other than that, like it never really affected me writing wise. Like on the actual day that it happened, they ended up banning me for the next race after that because of they were scared that it was going to affect me on the track and everything, and which I understand now. Like back when on the day you don't think about all that stuff, but I understood it. So no, with the weekend it was a difficult sort of thing. It was a high emotion thing, and then having obviously being banned from the race and that I had a good understanding of why they wanted to do that. At the same time, the thought process through my head was, and the good thing with racing with me is that it gives me the ability to forget all the outside things and all the sort of negative bits because you're just focusing on that one thing at that time.
You're right.
And basically, for them, like when they sort of banned me, it sort of felt like it just because the next week after that it was a triple header, and so we went to Portimao the week after, and it was sort of like that 5 days after the accident. It was sort of just like it was gonna all that was gonna just marinate into my head basically, and that was gonna be the only thing I was gonna be thinking about.
Mm,
And having the reason of wanting to ride was just being able to forget it for that one moment.
mm.
And I think that's just the one thing that's good with racing for me as well, and to get that out Like you're never going to forget that. Like that's going to be with me probably for the rest of my life. And but just having that one thing, being able to race and just forget everything and just focus on that one task, that's a good thing for me.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, like people ask me, they go, "How do you relax?" I go, "I ride the bike," and they go, "What do you meditate or anything?" I said, "It's a form of meditation. It's like,
It's
like,
it's no thinking and like a million thoughts at the same time.
yeah,
Like
interesting.
there's so much thinking to go through it, but it's second nature. You're not actually having to focus on having to think. It's a weird way of describing it. Like you're not put it, I don't know how to describe it. You just have to like to go into a corner. It's sort of it becomes a habit. You don't have to go, oh, I need to do this, I need to do that. It just becomes this routine that you just know no thought is needed to go into it. It's just an extra sense sort of thing.
Yeah, but there's an emptiness of everything else. Every
Hmm.
distraction disappears. They tell me surfers kind of understand that.
Yeah,
Wave surfers, and there's a lot of I don't know, similarities across that in that surfing requires a body machine interaction, just like motorbiking. And yeah, it's interesting because hard to describe, but we get it.
yeah,
People
yeah.
understand it.
I think it's just the high adrenaline, like all sports with adrenaline or with speed. I think it's just everything just becomes really slow. Like we don't actually feel the that sense of speed. I think it just everything slows down and just feels like it's fast, obviously, but it just feels more natural. It doesn't feel crazy like it would from the outside, I guess. Just
Yeah, tolerance. I think you build that
yeah,
tolerance over time, don't you?
yeah,
Do
yeah.
you, I hear them, they interview and talk to, a lot of racers, obviously, and a lot of them are kind of, what's the word, superstitious. They got these funny
Mm.
little patterns that don't want to break the pattern. Do you have anything like that?
I'm not necessarily like superstitious about stuff. I have my like little things, but if I break those things, it's not the end of the world, I guess. Like I've got like I always seem to put everything on just as a habit of like, oh, right before left or something, like my gloves and stuff. And I always do this little stretch before I get on track. But at the same time, if I don't do it, I don't think anything negative's going to happen. I guess like I am a little bit about it, I guess, depending on the day. I don't know. I'm not real like fully focused into the superstitious things too much, but I do have sort of a little bit. It's a bit hard to, I don't know. Just depends on the race day, maybe.
Yeah. When you're on the start line, like I always watch, well, Pecco Bagnaia comes to mind. He's got that routine where he rubs the tank. He's got a
Yeah,
funny pattern there. Do you have anything that happens routinely on the start line?
I'm pretty boring, I think. I just put it in neutral. I don't really like to look. I've got a new thing now where I don't like to look behind on the grid, what's behind me. I never, like, once I roll up to the starting grid, either if it's for media grid or if it's for start of the race, I don't like to look behind.
Yeah,
I
right.
always only look at the riders in front of the track in front, never looking, see what's behind me.
Yeah, no, that's cool. Do you, yeah, going into 2025, do you have any specific goals or objectives that you want to achieve this year?
Like last year was actually a really good year for me. Like we had a lot of tough moments and stuff where we could have done a lot better. But no, like coming from the first year and then to the second year, like I think our best result in the first year was 11th, and then last year we got I think fourth was our best result, but we were up in that front group multiple times, and I led a few races as well. So like this year, obviously the goal is to be on the podium, but I think even with the new team and the new, it's hard to say now, but I feel that we can be in the position to fight for like podiums and wins. Even like I don't know if it's a possibility to fight for the championship. I guess we're gonna have to wait and see for that. But I feel that it's probably the best chance I'm gonna have at it. Like this year, I think for me personally, I think it's going to be the best chance I'm going to get to fight for a championship. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, you still got to make that transition and
yeah,
motorbike. I mean, that's,
yeah.
how many people go onto a new bike and win that year?
Yeah, it's another tough thing too. I guess like it's hard to tell. Like when I was speaking to the team and stuff, they've had riders that have come from Yamaha and gone to Ducati, and they've gone, oh, so much easier and everything. Like it's all depends on the rider, I guess, as well. Just I guess we're going to find out and see what happens on the 23rd when I first up on the bike and go from there. But I think I'm not. I don't really struggle to adapt too much to different bikes and stuff, but it's going to be all new again for me though.
Yeah. How much pressure do you get from the teams themselves, initially and then over time? Does it change? Is there a lot of pressure or not?
I think it sort of becomes results based. Like no one puts as much pressure on themselves as I like on me as I do myself. Like I'm never getting pressure from mum or dad or from the team so much. I guess when we're in the position, they don't necessarily put the pressure on you, but when you're in a position where you can do good, and they sort of set that expectation, and that becomes the challenging bit. But it never really is them putting the pressure on you. It's later me going, oh, that's what they think, and then later I'm going to go, oh, if I don't get this, and I'm going to be bad or something. So it's sort of that self-inflicted pressure that I put on myself, I guess.
Right. Which often can be the worst type of pressure.
Yeah, pretty much. I used to be really bad for it, but no, nowadays I'm a lot better with it.
Talking to Mike Jones, a lot over the year. We talk after every round of ASBK. It's good
Yep.
because we get his insight in the race and that. But he talks about, when he goes out and practices, he does so with purpose. He's not necessarily riding flat out all the time. He's usually working on something. How do you approach the training yourself? Do you work on things specifically? Do you tone it back from 10 tenths to 9 tenths or 8 tenths? What do you do?
I still sometimes suffer from I've always got to be, every time I go out, I've got to be faster than I was before. And I always still struggle with that sometimes. But nowadays, I'm sort of like, especially after injuries and like even the costs of everything as well, it's sort of now I'm like going, if there's nothing that I can specifically do on this day, or if it's just like before I got my surgery and everything, I had the chance to maybe go to Eastern Creek or something for a normal track day. And it was sort of just going to be a day where it's packed with a lot of rides. You can't really achieve too many things. And I was like, oh, maybe it's not the best decision to go. It's better to sit it out. Sort of just weighing up all the options. Like if there's nothing that you're going to gain from it, then I don't necessarily like to go out and do something and make something worse or just waste something. So I like quality over quantity, basically.
Yeah, right. Well, that's
Yeah.
pretty consistent, with the way Mike talks about it.
Yeah. So
He's obviously a graduate of the school and he thinks
yeah.
skill development,
Yeah.
psyche. So that's very consistent with that.
Yeah. Like every now and then I'll have a day where like if I go out on the supermoto is probably my more guilty pleasure riding, like on a kart track or something. I usually enjoy that and just like to go out and cut laps. But when it's like on my race bikes or like or something close to my race bike, I generally like it to be in a thing where I have the possibility to improve.
Yeah.
Like if it's just to go out and do laps on it, like I don't necessarily like to do it because I just feel like it's not going to benefit too much, maybe. But that's just my personal feeling on it.
Maybe bike fitness or something, if you
Yeah, like for physical wise, like I think that's what the first test that I'm going to do this year is because it'll be the first time that I ride this year as well, and that will be more of a physical test, I think.
yeah. Funny you mentioned the motard. I got a 450 motard here, and I was telling someone the other day that my absolute favorite bike to ride on the range is the motard. All day long, over and above the super.
Yeah,
Now, the super bike's kind of serious, but the motard, man, that is fun.
you can have so much fun on them. Another good thing I've got overseas is a trials bike, and the pleasure of Andorra is the ability to go out your front door and up a mountain on the trials bike. It's the best fun ever in Andorra.
What do you get out of a trials bike that would be beneficial to the track?
I don't think, like for me, you get balance, but no, I don't think it actually translates across. But I just enjoy it
Mm.
more than anything. I think like just going out with a few of my mates and going up the mountains, just buggering around basically.
I went and tried one. The chief ride coach at the moment at the Superbike school, Dave Howard, he's got one
Yeah,
or had one, and I went and stayed right, went and visited him. I couldn't ride the thing. It was horrible.
no, they feel so strange when you first ride them because there's no, you're not sitting down, you're standing up the whole time, and it's like a quite length, like you're quite forward on the bike when you're riding. And I'm no Tony Bio by any means. The one Spanish did in Andorra, and he just like jumping rocks like the 3, 4 meters apart. Like I'm nowhere near that. I'm just the typical dude that cruises up a mountain. Like jump over a tiny rock or something, but it's the best fun ever in Andorra.
It'd have to be something, I reckon, like, I always think about flat track being kind of an activity that really gets fine motor control over your throttle control, and feel,
Yeah,
and then motocross, a lot of emphasis on brake feel and things like that. I'm sure there'd be something like balance or coordination of throttle and clutch or whatever on a trials bike that would translate. There'd be something in there for sure.
for me, possibly like a lot of reaction time, and it's a lot of focus required for it as well. Like especially going through the mountains, you got a million trees, and you're on like cliff edges and stuff all the time, especially over there. And I think it's a lot of coordination and balance and just the actual focus of it as well. I think is a really good thing with it.
Yeah. What are your plans longer term now? If we said, where does Harry want to be, over the rest of your career? What are your longer term goals?
The easiest thing that I could say is, oh, I want to be in MotoGP or in World Superbikes. My next goal is to be back in the World Championship for me. Like for me, the next step that I want to make is back into maybe World Supersport, or if the opportunity presents itself in Moto 2 or something like that, that would be
Yeah.
the good next step for me, I think. But I also don't want to put myself in the position to get an opportunity to go there and be at the back or something like that, because I'd rather be prepared and be in a decent position than, because it's more motivating, I guess. Like if I'm going there and then immediately just at the back the whole time, I think it's not enjoyable, and that's not what I want to do.
Yeah.
And I think just wanting to prepare myself to actually be there before I make that step.
Yeah. Well, fingers crossed for you, mate. You look at 2017 until now, you haven't stopped working at it, and like I follow your riding and like, holy shit, that's not the kid I remember. I remember, back then on the days of the 300s around Eastern Creek with the superbike school, you were flying then, but it's a different ball game. You're at a different level now. So you're obviously putting the work in, and I think you just got to keep doing that, eh?
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Thank you.
Very cool. I got a question for you, like away from your career. World Superbike, what are your predictions for the Superbike class? Any thoughts about who's going to win and how it's going to run this year?
I think Top Rack will probably back it up again this year, but I'm pretty interested in the new promoter team. I reckon they're going to have a decent go this year as well.
Have you seen that bike?
It's ridiculous, hey? It actually looks like a GP bike when I saw it in the first photos. I was like, surely that's not legal. But
Well, like we went through it, and Chappie and I were talking about it the other day, and I had a look at it today before we chatted, and it's got a steel trellis frame at the front. Then it has, then it splits and goes into
yeah,
alloy plates, and it's got a MotoGP swing arm. This is the street bike, by
it's
the way.
ridiculous. Yeah.
Yeah. What else? Active Aero. But they're up there.
It's getting out of control now, eh?
Oh, it's nuts. Okay, so
But even,
you reckon?
sorry.
So I'm hearing Top Rack to win, and
Yeah.
we can't rule out the promoters because this. Well, they got Alex Lowe, who's
Yeah. He's up there. I think if you can stay injury free, I think he can be up there definitely.
yeah. What about the Ducatis? Do you think they'll perform as well this year, or there might be a bit of competition?
I think, oh, for sure, I reckon. I don't know. Alvaro was struggling in testing this year, so but testing's it doesn't really, it's not clear all the time. Testing sometimes, like you go, oh, bloody hell, he's not going to be anywhere this year, and the next thing you know, they're smashing like Bulliger at the first test.
Yeah. Well, it's called testing, isn't it?
Yeah, so it's sort of hard to judge a year based off the testing, but I guess we're all going to find out at Phillip Island, I guess.
Yeah, we will. That's only this month too.
Yeah, a couple of weeks time, I think.
MotoGP. What are your predictions there? I'm going to ask everyone this, and
Yeah,
yeah,
I'm
close.
a Marquez fan.
Oh, yeah.
I'm gonna go Marquez straight up. I reckon him and Pecco. I
Yeah.
don't think Martin's gonna have a great year on the Aprilia. He might get a couple of podiums, but I reckon he'll struggle.
We had troubles in the testing in Malaysia. Like day one, he's a
Yeah, yeah,
couple.
he had two high sides, like off throttle high sides.
Yeah,
So it
he
was
he was out day one. Someone else crashed. It was Fabio.
Um, Fabio Di Gianantonio and Fernandez.
Oh yeah,
What
Ross
was it? Sorry, chucking a wheelie.
apparently. I think it's wheeling out of the car.
Serious?
It was after. Well, I don't know. Don't quote me, but
Yeah,
I believe it was after the time had finished,
bloody
and he done a race start and gone around. Anyway, I think that's
no, I didn't see that.
yeah. Well, they didn't film it. They didn't get good footage of it because they weren't.
Oh, I don't reckon they'd post it anyway.
Yeah. So okay, Marquez, because I think the testing, the results I saw on the testing was Alex Marquez, like
Yeah,
156.5 or something, and then Mark
yeah,
0.4 behind or something, and then Pecco.
yeah,
So yeah,
yeah. I think it's definitely going to be another year of Ducatis. I think.
yeah, I think so too. I'm with you. I'm putting my money on Marquez. It'll be a good one. What did I have there? I had something else. Oh yeah. Final thing. If people for people to go and follow you and keep up to date with what happened in the world of and number 43 out there, where do they go?
Oh, all my social medias are at Harry Curry 43. So every single one I think I got TikTok. I got every one of them under the sun. Got Instagram's probably the main one. Facebook, yeah, all of them. They're all at Harry Curry 43. And I guess if you want to follow the team, it's at Team Speed Racing.
Oh yeah, okay. So I'll put a link on the show notes anyway. Um, I was going to say, how do you get time? Have you got because I did look actually, and you've got like you're everywhere. If you type in Harry Curry 43 on Google, you go holy mackerel, TikTok and this and that. And this. How do you get time to do all that stuff?
I think I shortcut it all and like through Instagram, you can just post the same thing onto all of them or something. So I'm a bit lazy with it, probably.
Well,
It's
good.
nothing new to all of them.
Yeah. Well, listen, mate. Thanks for making the time to come and chat. I really appreciate it. Um, you know, I really like what you're doing, and I love the effort you've put in it over the years. Like I said, I've had the opportunity to see you, early in your career and now, and mate, I'm proud of you. The way you conduct yourself and who you've turned into. So keep going that way. You're a cool dude. All the best for 25, and fingers crossed, I'll be following you.
Thanks a lot, mate. I appreciate you having me on here again. It's good fun. I haven't done one of these in a while, so it's good to brush the cobwebs off, I guess.